The impasse between the senator representing Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpoti, and the Senate President took a very interesting turn during the week. Our FCT in Focus takes a look at her attempt at entering into the National Assembly to resume duties and the fact that she was stopped. Now, for a legal perspective on what happened and this very controversial court judgment that's been interpreted in different ways by different parties in this conflict, we have a barrister joining us on the program today to break it down for us. And we'll be getting to all of that when we give you an update on the major stories from Nigeria's presidency. This is Dateline Abuja. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I am Kayla Magwa. It was a very busy week right here in the nation's capital. Several NEC meetings held and resolutions reached, and the president said some things that got people a little upset. We'll bring all of that for you right here on our Abuja Wrap.
President Bola Tinubu has met with members of the Progressive Governors Forum led by the chairman, Hope Uzodimma. The meeting, which took place in the State House, is coming hours before the National Executive Council meeting of the All Progressive Congress. Speaking after the meeting, the chairman of the forum said discussions at the meeting focused on how to strengthen the party and the upcoming NEC meeting of the party, among other issues.
We came as a group formally to condole him on the passing of the former president, President Muhammadu Buhari, and also to discuss on the upcoming National Executive Committee meeting of our party and to get also share some ideas with Mr. President on how best to strengthen our party at the grassroots, at the local government, at the state level, up to the national level. So it's just a convivial discussion with Mr. President.
President Bola Tinubu is charging state governors to do more for the people who are complaining at the grassroots. The president gave this charge during the 14th National Executive Committee meeting of the All Progressives Congress at the State House Conference Center. Members of the party also elected Professor Nintawi Yelwada as the new national chairman of the APC following his nomination and subsequent election.
Nigerians are still complaining at grassroots. To you, the governors, you have to wet the grass more. And lead the way in delivering progressive change to Nigeria.
The newly elected national chairman of the ruling All Progressive Congress, Professor Nintawi Yelwada, has formally assumed office hours after his emergence at the 14th National Executive Committee meeting of the party. Speaking at an inaugural meeting presided over by the new national chairman, he pledged absolute commitment towards the unity and prosperity of the party. Professor Yelwada promised to consolidate on previous gains achieved by his predecessors while initiating new ones that will promote internal democracy in order to advance the common cause of Nigerians. The new national chairman, who appreciated President Bola Tinubu for his support and guidance, also supervised the swearing-in of the National Legal Advisor, Professor Abdul Karim Kana, into the office of the Deputy National Secretary, following the resignation of the former occupant of the office.
You've been my friends, you've been my partners, and I expect nothing less from you that we all join hands together as a team to work together to ensure that we expand this party, we increase membership, we deepen technology that you already started, and ensure that this party is transparent. This party enjoys the support of Nigerians and even beyond the shores of Nigeria to diaspora. We recognize all the members of the party who are working for us too. It is you that has made this party tick. The trust that you have for APC and the Renew Hope agenda of Mr. President will ensure that we help the executive and the National Assembly will support them to ensure that we deliver the dividend of democracy to the people of Nigeria. Like I said in my acceptance speech, all of us here especially the National Working Committee. We are the mechanics. The party is the vehicle. We will fix it, we will drive it, we will walk it, and ensure that we get to the destination of our choice.
President Bola Tinubu has directed the National Single Window Steering Committee to ensure the platform becomes fully operational by the first quarter of 2026. The directive was delivered during Tuesday's 5th Steering Committee meeting at the State House by the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, who represented President Tinubu at the meeting. Gbajabiamila said the recent Tax Reform Acts, signed into law in June, underscored the urgency of accelerating reforms and pursuing Nigeria's $1 trillion economy target. He also highlighted the importance of financial and trade reforms in achieving national economic transformation. He emphasized the role of a unified electronic platform in simplifying Nigeria's import and export operations.
The President and this administration has undergone very serious and bold reforms, especially in the financial and economic sector. This is the first meeting after the landmark tax bills were signed by Mr. President. And I think it's important that we continue to stay focused and make sure that this project, at the end of the day, we meet our timelines and achieve the results as expected by Mr. President.
President Bola Tinubu has restated his commitment to building future-facing infrastructure that will spur economic growth in the country. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, stated this following a meeting between the President and a delegation of the World Bank led by the Managing Director and Chief Financial Officer, Anshula Kant. The meeting focused on a 90,000-kilometer fiber cable project that is meant to improve the quality of connectivity in the country.
The World Bank is helping us to structure the round where government is putting money into this special purpose vehicle that is going to build and operate the fiber network, but we're also then getting 51% of the total funding from the private sector as well. And the entity is then going to be managed as an independent entity, not a government-led entity. The private sector will help us ensure that it is managed in a sustainable manner and that we can recoup our money back because people will pay for these services. So it's not one of those things where we take loans and we throw it into things that will not bring back the money. This is an investment in infrastructure that will keep giving because connectivity is now the bedrock of everything we do in society. Now, you know, Nigerians are really creative. Our creative economy is strong. Without strong connectivity, we're not going to be able to power them to the next level.
Welcome back. During the week, the senator representing Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan, tried to enter into the National Assembly, believing that this court judgment from Justice Binta Nyako meant that she should resume office. And the Senate disagreed. They locked her out of the place. Well, here are the details of what happened on that day right here in Abuja at the National Assembly. It is an ongoing battle that's been raging since her suspension on the 6th of March 2025. Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan is seen here at her home in Abuja, preparing to make her way to the National Assembly to, in her words, resume her duties as senator after a court judgment on her suspension delivered on July the 4th, 2025.
Even salt itself is derived from water, from the ocean. So even if I melt under fire, I will be solidified. What is it?
This document has been the bone of contention since that ruling, with the Senate insisting that the court never asked her to resume. The spokesperson of the Senate had maintained that the court gave an advisory, which the lawmakers consider as not binding. A statement from Senator Adaramodu states the court found Senator Akpoti Uduaghan guilty of contempt of court and imposed penalties, including a fine of 5 million naira payable to the federal government, and a mandatory apology in 2 national newspapers and on her Facebook page. Till date, these directives remain uncomplied with. We advise the distinguished senator to refrain from any attempts to storm the Senate next Tuesday under a false pretext as doing so will not only be premature, but also undermine the dignity of the Senate and violate due process, end quote. It is Tuesday, and that advice has been ignored by the senator, who makes her way to the main gate of the National Assembly. Security personnel stop her and her convoy from gaining entrance into the premises. She then decides to alight from the vehicle and make her way into the National Assembly on foot. She is stopped at another checkpoint, and after a brief scuffle, she, alongside her supporters, continue to walk into the National Assembly.
You all should be ashamed of yourself. You close the doors. You make yourself prisoners.
After it is made clear that she would not be granted access into the premises, the lawmaker briefs the media on her thoughts about what has transpired and what she intends to do next.
That outburst I had on the floor was just a compilation of so many wrongs that Akpabio has meted against me. And I will say this, pretty much it's a shame that we have had so many good Senate presidents. We've had Chuba Akpadibo of blessed memory. We've had Senator David Mark. We have had Bukola Saraki. We've even had Ahmed Lawal, who is a senator right now. And I'd say this pretty much is the worst assembly Nigeria has ever had. And I hope we will not have to suffer this anymore, because it tells a lot on the individual. And I've said this before and I'm saying it again. The Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, runs the Nigerian Senate as if it's the third-term governor of Akwa Ibom. Many senators are afraid. You've all seen what happened. You are not allowed to speak. When you try to speak or air your views on certain issues that are critical, you get shut down if it does not conform with what he wants. Going forward, I'm going to have a meeting with my legal team, and then most likely they will have to probably proceed to the appellate court to seek interpretations of what has just happened, because we are law-abiding citizens. Everyone here who has accompanied me, you can see no one is unruly, even though some have vehemently decided to express their dissatisfaction with the system. I am a law-abiding citizen, and it is very important I do mention, and Nigerians should know, that even though we do have 2 federal government criminal cases against me, they are on criminal defamation, simply because I spoke up on the threat to life. And everybody has a right to speak up on their threat to life. By and large, considering the fact that the Senate is vacating tomorrow, whenever they deem it fit to resume, we would resume as well. So what matters most is all the pressures and all the calls of me apologizing for no wrong that I did. I have refused to do that. So if it means staying the entire 6 months for an unjust suspension, which I am saying, repeating again, has been quashed by the courts, so be it. I have pretty much been busy with my constituents on the brighter side. You've all seen, we've been carrying out a lot of projects in the past few months. And that is true to my nature, because I am a technocrat. I'm a lawyer. I'm an oil and gas expert. My formative year in my career were in the oil and gas industry. So I got into politics because I wanted to create a different mark for other people like me who wants to venture into politics. I also got into politics because I want to intentionally raise the standard of leadership. It's enough for us in Africa to sit down and admire leaders or politicians from other smaller African countries, not talk of the European world and the other Western world. So I hope that with this journey so far, however it goes, people should muster strength from me, and I hope that 2027 we will have more courageous, younger, educated, intentional leaders that will be elected into office, so that together we can change the narrative of Nigeria.
Vowing to come back when the Senate resumes from recess in 2 months, Senator Akpoti Uduaghan and her supporters leave the National Assembly complex, making their way back to her convoy on foot. to give us a legal perspective on everything that's gone on, this court judgment, Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan's suspension from the Senate, her refusal to apologize, and of course the Senate locking her out during the week. We have with us a barrister, Barrister Ekemini Udim, who's going to be breaking down what all of this means, where the misinterpretations came from, and what should happen going forward. Please watch this. Barrister Ekemini Udim, welcome to Dateline Abuja.
Thank you so much, Kayla.
All right, so let's get straight to it. I've heard you talk about this before. You say that the interpretation of Justice Binta Nyako's ruling is being skewed by different parties. And in particular, you've been speaking about Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan, saying, that her side doesn't really understand this particular ruling by Justice Binta Nyako. But there's also the conversation about how, I want to use the right words, someone's called it speaking in tongues, how ambiguous and unclear some of these rulings from the courts have been recently. Is that what we're looking at here? A situation where a ruling from a court wasn't delivered in such a way that it could be easily understood by everyone who's looking at it?
Looking at the judgment of my Lord Justice Binta Nyako, that has been interpreted, by several persons differently, you do not also say that this was not expected. I go to court, and the judgment of the court is given in favor of my clients. It is possible that I interpret it in a particular way. Another person also interprets it in another way. But if you look at the judgment of my Lord Justice Binta Nyako, it doesn't really give room for too much of confusion. For me, it is clear. Our good, distinguished Senator Natasha went to the court, and she asked for 6 reliefs. The question is, which of the 6 reliefs was granted in favor of Senator Natasha? And the answer is none. None was granted in her favor. The Lord also said that she has gone through the relevant laws, the rules of the Senate, and she has seen that there is need to amend the rules of the Senate and even amend the law so as not to suspend the senator for as much as 6 months.
So that's where the bone of contention is. That's what the bone of contention is. The fact that you believe that was a recommendation. It's non-binding, right? So it's not binding on the Senate to take that recommendation on, because it's not a ruling. So that's what you said. But what's happened is that the Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan side of the legal, her legal team believe that that when a justice makes a recommendation like that, it should be binding. If the justice found that the punishment was excessive, and asked that they should recall her back, it cannot just be an opinion. They believe that this is something that should have been, taken up immediately by the National Assembly. But of course, the argument has always been that the judiciary cannot tell the legislature what to do and vice versa.
Recommendations remain as recommendations. They are recommendations. We had the national conference during Abacha's time. Recommendations were made. Okay? It was left for the head of state to implement. In Jonathan's time, we also had recommendations being made from the conference. It was left for Jonathan to implement.
Yeah, but those are confirmed. We're talking about a ruling in court now. This is a little different.
Good. Now, I was only making an illustration to show what a recommendation is. It remains recommendation until it is implemented. Now, bring it to the Natasha's matter. Recommendations by courts of law come under the realm of obiter dictum. They do not form the ratio decidendi of the judgment of the court. Now, when you talk about implementation, 2 things spring up: ratio decidendi and obiter dictum. Whereas ratio decidendi can be implemented, obiter dictum cannot be implemented. Recommendations cannot be implemented. It is left for the Senate to say, well, whatever the nature, whatever it is recommendation, we hereby decide to implement. But if the Senate refuses to implement, the Senate has not committed any offense.
When recommendations are made like that, especially in a case as dicey as this one, which is why the conversation about the clarity of judgments has come up right now. when you make a recommendation on something as dicey and popular as this particular topic, you would think that it would be clear enough so that the parties involved know exactly where they stand. Because what's happened is that someone now has looked at the recommendation from a justice and figured, you know, a recommendation should be, seems to be in my favor, should be something that should be acted upon immediately.
It is not correct to say that Senator Natasha does not understand that that was a recommendation. Now, Senator Natasha has filed a notice of appeal, which I have a copy. I have a copy on my table right here. If you go to ground 23 of the notice of appeal as filed on the 23rd day of this month by Senator Natasha a few days ago, that ground complains that the judge was right in observing that the suspension of a senator for 6 months is excessive, but that the judge was in error by failing to make a specific order for the recall of Senator Natasha. This is ground 23 of her grounds of appeal. And in the particular, she has been very clear about it that, yes, whereas my Lord made the observation, my Lord also have also gone ahead to make a specific order for her recall. This is in the notice of appeal that she filed. Now, if it is Senator Natasha that approved the filing of this notice of appeal, why would Senator Natasha now put out the narrative out there that the judge had ordered for her recall? I mean, this is public. Anybody can look at it. I'm talking about ground 23 of the notice of appeal filed by Senator Natasha. She has complained that the judge did not make that positive order. If that is the case, then why do you go to the National Assembly asking that you should be allowed to go in, going with a crowd of people to be allowed to go in? I understand her. She's not, I mean, she's bitter about what has happened. And I'm not also happy that she's not in the legislature, in the Senate, speaking for her people. However, due process of law must be followed. That is where I stand.
Let's talk a bit about the future, because there are some things that she said. She said the legal team was going to, she was going to talk to her legal team to explain what the actions of that day mean. I mean, her being locked out. She wanted to know, she said she was going to talk with her legal team about that, find out what that means, and then what actions they can take after that. And then, of course, you know, the Senate is in recess for 2 months. By the end of the recess of the Senate in 2 months, her 6-month suspension should be over by then. She said she's willing to do that wait if that's what it means, you know, and says that she will resume when the Senate comes back from recess in 2 months' time. What do you make of that?
Well, talking about discussing with her legal team to come up with maybe a legal recommendation, that's fine. That's fine. As a matter of fact, I am one of the persons recommending that at this point, Senator Natasha needs to rely heavily on her legal team. She should trust her legal team. She should not rely on social media advice or anybody urging her on to, you know, resort to self. Her legal team, senior advocates of Nigeria, have seen their names on that list. I mean, you should trust them enough to advise. If the legal team advises her to proceed against the Senate for locking her out, that's fine. But again, I am also a legal practitioner. And I ask the question, I'm in litigation, and I ask the question, what exactly can be litigated against the Senate over the refusal of the management of the Senate to allow Senator Natasha to enter when there was no positive order of the court mandating that she should be allowed to enter? So I think that that was itself avoidable. It wasn't necessary. And that is why at the end of the day, nothing was achieved.
As we wrap up, what do you think should happen? What do you think the end game is going to be? Looking at how it's been unfolding all this since March, we've been on this matter. How do you see it ending? Do you see an end?
Well, for me, if you continue on the path of litigation will keep this longer. 2 respondents have filed appeals. The Senate has filed now. I saw the Senate's appeal yesterday. I've also seen the appeal of the Senate president. Now, each of the respondents, they have a right to file different appeals. So you can have as much as 4 or 5 appeals arising from one judgment. When is that going to be decided? The courts are on vacation. For the courts that have not yet gone, by the end of this month, all the courts in this country will be on vacation for 2 months plus. Now, that prolongs this whole thing. No one knows what happens at the Court of Appeal. Anybody that is aggrieved can still go to the Supreme Court. And we're talking about time here. Somebody's tenure is going. So what I would advise is this. Parties in this matter should consider sitting back together to discuss this whole thing. Tempers have been flared. The tempers can also be brought down. So good reasoning should be brought into this matter. The best way to handle this matter is to sit on a round table, all the parties. If you had wronged somebody, you say you're wrong. You apologize to the person. If you had offended by whatever, you say you're sorry. And then parties sit down together, agree, and then have a recall. Continuing this matter on the path of litigation might see us entering the next year, still this matter not being fully decided. So I recommend parties to come together on this and then see how they can resolve this as friends and as colleagues in the National Assembly.
Thank you so much, Barrister, for being with us on Dateline Abuja. And good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
My regards to you.
Thanks to my guest and to everyone who spoke to us today on the program. Please let us know the happenings in your neighborhood using the social media handles showing right now on your screens. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you next time.